earthquake killer. He used to hear voices warning him of an earthquake that will occur and die because of it. And in order to survive it, people must be killed. And he already began to kill people to prevent the earthquake from occurring until the number of his victims reached 13. And every time he made sure that killing was the reason for delaying the earthquake. So he continued to kill and didn't retreat from his decision until he fell under the hands of the police because of his last crime. And yet he wanted to complete what he was doing so as not to die.
Was childhood the reason? And what was the court's opinion on what happened? Herbert William Mullin was born on 18 April 1947 in California, and his father was strict with him and not bad dealing. When Mullin was 5 years old, he moved to San Francisco and got many friends. High school wasn't the best for Mullin as he began suffering from paranoid schizophrenia disorder, affected by the death of his friend Diane Richardson in 1965 to a large extent, where in 1969 he entered the Mendocino Government Hospital and decided to be treated. But 6 weeks passed and then he was discharged again, and with the passage of years he was admitted to the hospital, but each time he was discharged without completing his treatment, and at that time he began to admit to his co-workers what he was hearing voices. And at the age of 23 years, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia by 3 different doctors, and with that was outside the sanatorium living a normal life. On Mullin's birthday in 1906, an earthquake occurred on the same day and became an unforgettable memory for him, and he linked this day to the words of a scientist who spoke in 1972 and predicted that on 4 January 1973 the San Andreas Fault would again trigger a devastating earthquake over Northern California.
And he began to hear voices in his head that an earthquake could be prevented by making a human sacrifice, by protecting our continent from catastrophic earthquakes by killing. In other words, avoiding small natural disasters from a major natural disaster. Mullin already began to hear the voices and carry out his crimes. The first victim was on 13 October 1972, 55-year-old Lawrence White, who was killed with a baseball bat after Mullin pretended to have a problem with the car, then stopped and opened the lid. White was standing in the road waiting for a ride and offered to help fix his car in exchange for a trip. Mullin then killed him and dragged White's body into the woods, where it was found the next day.
Mullin stopped the killing for a while until he heard that the earthquake would happen soon, and then immediately chose the second victim, a mobile lady named Mary Margaret, whom he picked up on a highway. Mullin stabbed her in the chest while driving, cut her stomach in order to test his hypothesis of pollution, took her organs, examined them, and rubbed them on nearby branches so that he could see them better. Police found her skeleton body only several months later. The third victim was on 2 November 1972 and was Father Henry Tom, and went to him to know that what he is doing is normal or not. But Tom wasn't spared from him as he beat him and stabbed him and then left him and went out running from the church. On 25 January 1973, 5 people were killed once, and when no earthquake happened, it was more certain that killing was the only way to prevent anything from happening, where on the same day an old friend and his wife were killed, then a woman and her 2 children in the same house. Mullin didn't regret the murder as he continued to do so until his last victim, the murder of a 72-year-old retired old man and fishmonger named Farid Abi Perez, who works in his garden in Santa Cruz, Then Mullin was in the car outside the garden, stopped in front of him, put the gun on his foot, and shot him once in the heart. This crime is the site of the neighbor of the dead man and got a license plate Mullin and tell the police and post the news of a murder and at large was published a few minutes after the description was broadcast on police radio. Mullin was arrested on a police patrol with a .22 caliber pistol in his car. He didn't take time with the police until he confessed to everything and that he had done 13 murders in order to prevent the earthquake and that the voices were the ones who ordered him to do so and were determining who to kill. And he was presented to the court on 30 July 1973 and after 14 hours he was sentenced to life imprisonment. And while in detention, Mullin said that he committed his crimes only in an attempt to save the environment, and he was diagnosed by Dr. David Marlowe from the University of California, Santa Cruz, said that he had a schizophrenic reaction of the incense type disorder. In 2020, Mullin could get out, but with specific conditions, and yet he didn't get out and preferred to stay in prison. Mullin died on 18 August 2022 at the age of 75 and died at the California Health Care Home.